Last week, I spent more than an hour daily watching real crime videos on Rotten Mango's channel. If you don't know who she is, she basically makes YouTube videos about real crime cases that either have been solved or are currently under investigation. And after I finished one of her videos, I was like, I just spent more than an hour of my life watching a video about someone being brutally. And then I realized how many hours of my life I have spent watching documentaries, videos, listening to podcasts, articles, films, everything about serial killer or cases in general. And it was a lot. So I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? But then I realized how I've had this conversation with many of my friends, especially female friends, and realized that I'm not the only one. There are a lot of us who love consuming this type of content. So I decided to dig a little deeper into why do people, especially women, are so obsessed and love true crime so much. So here's what I found and what I think about this topic. First off, we need to talk about how massive this thing is. I found this report from Edison Research, and they found that 84% of the US population age 13 plus watch or listen to true crime through any media, television, YouTube, social media, or podcasting. So that's an estimated 230 million consumers as of August 2024. YouGov did a survey and found that 58% of women say they enjoy true crime compared to only 42% of men. So we're talking about a pretty significant gender split here. And researchers Kelly Bowling from the University of Nebraska and Kevin Hall from the University of South Carolina specially looked at true crime podcast listeners. And they found that 73% of the audience is female. So when we narrow it down to just podcasts, the gender gap gets even bigger. And they also found that the average listener is a woman in her late 20s. So that's literally me and probably half of you watching this. And when I think about my own consumption habits, I realize how intense they are. Like, I'm subscribed to at least 20 YouTube channels that talk about true crime or crime-related stuff. All of my liked podcasts on Spotify are crime-related stuff, except Call Her Daddy. I can watch Law & Order SVU daily, and I even made true crime folders so I can save videos on each platform. So I know this is a problem, but apparently it's a very common problem. And I also realized I'm not just passively consuming this stuff, I'm actively learning from it. Like, I'm genuinely thinking about situational awareness stuff I picked up from a podcast. And is that normal? Apparently it is, because women are 2.5 times more likely than men to consume true crime content to prepare for unsafe situations. And among fans who have been victims of a crime, 1 in 3 said that consuming true crime helped them react better to the incident. So we're not just entertainment seeking, we're literally using this as education. Let's talk a little bit about history here, because this fascination isn't new. What has changed is accessibility and format. People have always been interested in crime. Sherlock Holmes was massively popular in the 1890s, but we've gone from reading fictional detective stories to having actual police interrogation footage on YouTube. In 1995, the O.J. Simpson trial became the first major criminal case broadcast live on television, drawing more than 150 million viewers. So that's more than the Super Bowl that year. And this was the first time general public could watch a real murder trial unfold in real time. And it fundamentally changed how we consume crime content. Then in 2014, Serial was launched and it became the fastest podcast to reach 5 million downloads. So what Serial did was prove that deep dive investigative storytelling about real crimes could capture mainstream attention for months. So this kind of created the template for the modern true crime podcast format. And by February 2025, we had around 23,000 active true crime podcasts compared to just like 50 in 2010. And YouTube channels dedicated to true crime analysis have collectively gained over 1 billion views in just the past year. But I wanted to understand what's actually happening in our brains when we consume this type of content. So I looked into the neuroscience research, and it turns out that there's this measurable thing called morbid curiosity. Basically, we're evolutionarily wired to be fascinated by threatening situations when we're experiencing them from a safe distance. So it's like how you can't look away from a car accident. Your brain is trying to learn from potential threats even when you're not actually in danger. But here's what's really interesting. When they did brain scans of people watching other people in pain, women showed way more activity in the parts of the brain that are responsible for empathy and emotional processing. So we're not just watching these stories, we're emotionally experiencing them in a completely different way than men are. And honestly, that explains so much about how I I consume this content. Because I'm not just interested in the mystery or the investigation. I'm thinking about the victims. I'm imagining what their families went through, what are still going through, and I'm genuinely invested in whether justice gets served. So throughout human history, women have faced different types of threats, especially when it comes to interpersonal violence. So we've evolved to be really good at pattern recognition when it comes to potentially dangerous situations. So true crime is basically like this massive database of those patterns. We're subconsciously cataloging information about how predators behave, what warning signs look like, how people escape dangerous situations. And it's not conscious, but our brains are treating this content like survival information. And most women have actually changed some safety behavior because of something they saw on true crime content. I thought about this and I realized that I totally do this thing too. Like when I'm walking alone, I'm more aware of my surroundings and people around me. I don't leave my food or drinks unattended if I'm in public. I trust my gut feeling about people more because I've heard so many stories about victims who ignore red flags. So the whole empathy component, I think, really explains why women are so drawn to this genre. We develop real emotional connection to the victims, to investigators, to the families, even to podcast hosts, which makes sense when I think about how I react to this content versus how my boyfriend reacts. He can watch a documentary and just be like, interesting, and I'm just over here Googling the case for 3 hours straight afterward. Mako wants to say hi. Hello, YouTube people. Oh, never mind, she left. There's also the whole man versus bear thing that was all over social media for a while. When women were asked if they'd rather encounter a strange man or a bear alone in the woods, most women chose the bear.
Would you rather be stuck in a forest with a man or a bear?
Bear. Man is scary.
With a bear.
What I've heard about bears, they don't always attack you, right? Unless you fuck with them. So maybe a bear.
Depends what man, but probably a bear.
100% a bear, which is terrifying to say, but
Definitely a bear. Some men are very scary out there.
And honestly, that makes total sense. Because when you've heard hundreds of stories about what men are capable of doing to women or to other men and children, a bear starts to seem predictable in comparison. At least with a bear, you know what you're dealing with. There's information online on how to act if you encounter a bear, so you can be prepared beforehand. But with a man, you have no idea what can happen. They can literally sweet talk and make you think they're a nice person when in reality they're not. And if you think I'm exaggerating or women are just too blind to see obvious red flags, just think about Ted Bundy and how he got so many girls by being this sweet man who would treat everyone right when in reality he was a psychopath serial killer. So yeah, it makes sense that a woman would rather encounter a bear than a man.
The worst thing that, a bear is going to do is either attack you or leave you alone, right? A man could do so many worse things to you, And then there was one woman, and I think her sentiment was echoed around all of social. It's just she basically said, at least if I got attacked by a bear, people would believe me.
So when you put all of these things together, Jesus. So when you put all of these things together, our true crime obsession isn't weird or unhealthy. It's this perfect storm of evolutionary psychology, neuroscience, empathy, community building, and genuine educational value, all packed in really compelling storytelling. We're not just being entertained, we're learning, we're connecting with other people, we're processing anxiety in a healthy way, and we're satisfying that deep psychological need to understand human behavior at its extremes. But anyway, I'm really curious about your experience with all of this. Do you think you consume true crime content for the reasons I talked about, or do you have different reasons? And honestly, does this video make you feel better or worse about spending your Sunday afternoon watching murder documentaries? Because personally, knowing that there's legitimate psychological and evolutionary reasoning behind this obsession makes me feel a little less weird about it. Let me know in the comments, because I'm genuinely fascinated by how this has become such a universal experience for so many women. And if you have any podcast or documentary recommendations, definitely drop those too, because clearly I need more content to fit this very scientifically justified obsession. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you in next week. Bye!